Hi, my name is David Butler. I am the Head of Charities and Not-for-Profits at Bishop Fleming, and I'm one of the co-authors of the Academy Benchmark Report. I'm here today with Shaun Mooney, who's one of my co-authors, and we're going to be talking about income. So Shaun, what has happened with Academy funding this year?
Yeah, it's been a relatively stable year for funding in academies this year. There's been a slight increase in per pupil funding in both primaries and maths, but there's been a slight reduction in per pupil funding in secondaries this year. But overall, as a kind of broad spectrum, there's been a fairly level, if not slight, increase on revenue during the year.
Okay. And what's been the impact of COVID funding on overall income?
COVID funding's actually been relatively consistent year on year again. There's been a change in the way that the funding's structured. So we've moved from a support grant method last year where you would apply for additional funding to cover your additional costs from COVID. This year we've moved to a more formulaic approach through the recovery grant process, where it's more formulaic.
Okay, but has that led to an increase in income?
So yeah, it hasn't necessarily led to an increase in income as such, but what we are seeing is academies carrying forward quite sizable COVID fund balances this year as opposed to last year. And part of that's down to academies not always knowing what they can spend COVID funding on, as it's not always clear, particularly around the mass testing funding that was available, which didn't seem to have a method behind the funding that academies understood.
Okay. And are there problems with trusts being able to spend the money as well?
There have been problems with trusts being able to spend their money. Like I said, they're not always sure what they can spend it on. Particularly staff costs, they're not sure what percentage they should be allocating against the funding. I think that's what's leading to the balances carried forward.
Okay. And what trends do you think we're going to see with future income?
Well, the government have committed to returning funding to 2010 per pupil levels. So I'd expect to see funding increase over the coming years. They've committed to moving towards a fairer funding model with an NFF formula, but that's being kicked down the road a bit again. But I would expect over the next couple of years we'll see per pupil funding increase in line with the government's announcements.
Okay, thanks Shaun. Thanks very much for watching. If you need any further information, then you can download the full copy of our benchmarking report from our website, or alternatively contact your regular advisor.